Hi, and welcome to the first webinar series organized by FunDok about the travel and hospitality industry and current events affecting it. I'm Hamad, and I'll be moderating the panel. Today's topic will be the effects of COVID-19 on travel and hospitality in the MENA region. We're joined by a fantastic panel who are very generous with their time and very generous with their insights as well. Our panelists were Rami, the co-founder and CEO of Maison, Privee, a short-term rental management company in Dubai. Jean-Marc Kabalan, he's a board member on a multi-hotel and multi-Nile cruise business in Egypt. And Karim Mekachera, who is the managing director of Atout France, which is the tourism promotion agency of the French government for the MENA region. I hope you enjoy the questions, and I hope we see you in a further webinar session. So thank you very much for your time. Enjoy it.
So to get the questions going, I'd like to start with you, Jean-Marc. You are poised in a unique situation, having your business in Egypt. You've gone through already a very tough crisis earlier, about a decade ago, with the Egyptian revolution and subsequent political turmoil. Are there any similarities between the two crises, and is there any lessons that you've taken away from then that you're moving forward with today?
Well, the situation is, they're very similar in some ways, but slightly different in some others. They're similar, and it's, in Egypt is a very volatile country for tourism, and it's a very difficult country to operate it, because when you have a crisis, whether it's a terrorism attack or the revolution, it usually happens very abruptly. So you have to start taking measures very quickly and make decisions very fast to something that happens without any warning, and where business comes to a complete stop very quickly. So this is the similar sort of pattern to anything that happens in Egypt. The difference is that in this case, you have no idea how long it's going to last, but you can sort of put a timeline with different scenarios. In the case of the revolution, it was really open-ended. So it's somehow a bit easier to plan for this crisis than it was for the revolution. The hard part about it is that when it comes to tourism, there's a psychological factor which is very difficult to put a number on. So even though the situation might be better, you don't know how long it's going to take for people to feel safe to come again. So again, in this case, you don't have that fear of safety that comes with a terrorist attack or with instability like during the revolution. So we feel that once everything goes back in order and everything is sort of resolved in terms of this virus, then people will come back fairly quickly, which makes it slightly easier to plan than during the revolution.
It was very interesting what you said about the necessity of speed in taking decisions. Is this something that you've built into your organization, or is this something like, are there mechanisms that you have specifically created to be able to be this agile in your decision making, or is this something that's become second nature?
Yeah, sorry, let me answer that question, which was really the main point of your question. So what we learned from the first crisis, like I said, was to make fast decisions and quick actions. And the longer you linger sort of hesitating as to taking actions, the more it costs your business. So in that respect, we knew that we had to make quick decisions and take action immediately. So what we're trying to do, we're trying to create different scenarios and decide which one is best going forward. So we can say, we can start with a partial closure of the hotels, knowing that next month we might go into a full closure of the hotel. But in each scenario, we want to know exactly how much it's going to cost us, how much we're going to be saving, what would be the logistical challenges of closing completely. So all these things have to be ready from day one, so that we can decide when to pull the trigger and when to, close completely or partially, keep some maintenance or not. These are the sort of things we need to be ready with as soon as a crisis hits. So like you said, agility is a key word. we want to be able to make those decisions quickly and act quickly. But at the same time, it's also very important to be prepared. So even if times are good, we try to keep a lean company with lean operations, knowing that at any moment we would have to scale down. So these are all part of the, playing the game of the tourism business in Egypt, is keeping it lean and agile. And at the same time, you also have to keep a lot of reserves, because you might have to carry fixed expenses for a very long time. So you got to plan for these things, and you got to build them into your business model. So like you said, all these things come between the crisis, not only at the time of the crisis, but you got to build them into your business model.
Now, on following on from that about agility, Rami, you're the founder and the CEO of one of the fastest growing startups in hospitality, uniquely in hospitality in the UAE. And we always hear that startups need to be agile and need to be flexible in their pivot, etc. In a crisis like today, and I know you've taken measures to accommodate the changing circumstances, where do you think the balance lies for a startup between being flexible and agile enough to accommodate changing circumstances while at the same time protecting the original value proposition for which you created the business and you believe is the inherent long-term value of your business? How do you make that assessment?
Sure, of course. Let me first tell you that our business, we are lucky that our business is very asset light. So it's not like hotels where you need to invest in big infrastructures and there are a lot of fixed costs and a lot of, let's say, upfront costs that you need to pay. For us, it was very different. Our model is very light in terms of assets. Our costs are variables. We don't have any fixed costs. So for us, when the crisis happened, it was very easy for us, to control our costs and adapt to the new situation. So, for example, most of our costs are related, let's say, to cleaning costs, to transportation of the guest relation executive who will check in and check out guests. So we were able very easily to cut all these costs. At the same time, because our model also is very flexible, these are apartments that are used for different purposes. They're not only used as, let's say, hotel rooms for tourists. We were able to shift our model quickly from focusing on tourists to focusing on people who are locked down in the city and they need extended accommodation for a couple of months, or people who want to move away from, because of the uncertainty, to move away from annual leases to monthly leases or even a couple of week leases. So I think what really helped us was to do a quick decision to adapt the model. But I would say that the model itself, from the beginning, was created with this flexibility.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Very, very, very true. And but also, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. You're working in an industry that you understand will rebound. So there always needs to be the back in your mind, not moving too far away from where you've started, to the point where once the original value proposition is available, you need to be able to cater to that.
Of course, and sure, and this is what we did actually. We did not, for example, do any layoffs so far. All our staff are still there. We did not even do until now any payroll cut because we don't believe that for the time being, for at least for these first few weeks or next months, we are still maintaining our cash flows. Of course, they went down, but they went down still to a level where we can still keep our full, let's say, staff and our full core team there. The only thing that we got rid of were, like as mentioned, the variable costs, cleaning costs, for example, reducing sorts of things that doesn't affect your model. But the essence of the company is still there.
Fantastic. And before we move to the next question, just a quick housekeeping note for the people who have attended just joined us recently. Feel free to send us your questions in the Q&A tab, and we'll after we go through the panel's questions here, we'll be happy to get to any of them as well. So moving on to Karim, you represent probably the most visited tourist destination globally in terms of arrivals as France. What strategies, what policies is France adopting, or what sort of messaging is coming out at the moment that you believe is applicable, that travel destinations in the MENA region, such as, you know, the UAE, Egypt, and Jordan, can learn from these best practices and policies that you guys are seeing there?
I think that, Mohammed, first of all, we have to say that, you know, the crisis is very recent. So today, I mean, the emergency is how to manage the crisis. And for the time being, yes, before finding, in a second time, you know, recovery measures, rebound plans, and of course, probably the most important, you know, but more on the long run, we have to prepare tomorrow and to rethink the business and probably the customer proposition we have. Because when this crisis will be over, probably the patterns, you know, the way to travel will be affected, and people will be more demanding on some points, you know, and especially, for example, in the hospitality business or in tourist sites or different tourism activities. So today, I think we have all been very surprised, you know, by how quick was this crisis in the country. As you said, you know, France is a destination with 90 million tourists a year, and I think that more than the number of tourists, this crisis shows us that it's not about more tourism in terms of numbers of tourists, but better tourism. Okay. I think if there is a takeaway today that we can have, this is probably the one I have in mind now. Now, our activity as the French Tourism Development Agency is, of course, to promote, as I said before, our destination on more than 30 with more than 30 offices around the world. The thing is now is how we will convince our partners, the French professional from the tourism industry in France, to come over, you know, on the different markets and to sell the destination. So that's the main question. And in the meantime, of course, we don't know, no one can have any view of when this crisis will be over. So we have to think about the way we can still promote our destination on social networks, how we will organize all the different promotional activities like workshops, maybe virtual workshops, you know, online, things like that. So the strategy is with our government, of course, and our Minister of Tourism, you know, the strategy is being rethought now, especially now. The emergency is for the country first, you know, to support all the tourism businesses we have in the country. And if you look at the loans that have been granted, you know, for the government so far, we have 550 million euros for tourism businesses in France that have been so far supported since the beginning of the crisis, you know, by the French government. 550 million euros out of a total of 20 billion euros that have been promised, you know, by the government to French companies. And of course, in this industry, most of the companies are SMEs. So like my friends, you know, with us today. So the government, you know, lays the emphasis so far, you know, to support these companies. And by giving them loans, guaranteed loans by the government. So today, the strategy, the first point, I think, is how we can support the industry, the businesses, and of course, you know, how we will rethink the customer proposition, you know, very soon, you know, to keep this destination still a leading destination, but maybe not in the number of tourists, but something different.
So do you think that, let's take Dubai as a case study. Do you think that it needs to do that as well? It needs to rethink its customer proposition as well post-COVID? Is this something that they need to look at themselves?
Definitely. I think that any destinations, will have to think or rethink, their strategy, and the customer proposition will have to be reviewed completely. And sometimes I'm telling you my own experience when I come in an airport and I see thousands of tourists, waiting at the immigration. And this is what I've seen in my country, during the peak season.
Yeah.
As a tourist, I think I don't want anymore to see that, or to travel in such conditions, especially, right after the COVID,
Yeah.
So the way we will market the destinations and we will attract tourists has to change, of course. Yeah.
Now, speaking of transformations, we're having a webinar on Zoom. Everybody's having their meetings digitally now. Everybody's working remotely. But fundamentally, travel and hospitality are a contact industry. There's only so much that you can migrate digitally. Jean-Marc, everybody's trying to transform digitally. What can we do? What can our industry do? What have you done? Is there anything that you see moving forward that technology can aid fundamentally in the business?
Yeah, I was thinking about this question. Like you said, it's the hospitality business, the hotel business is a very, guest contact based, sort of experience based kind of business. So I don't think you can have any Zoom clients stay in your hotel. Definitely, we had to move, like any other business, we had to move our management meetings and everything on Zoom and other channels. But in terms of digital transformation for an industry like the hotel business, if you look at the two different sides of it, which is the sales channels, definitely, Egypt is very much behind when it comes to acquiring customers online and through direct bookings, through websites and online channels. So this is, number one priority for every hotel owner in Egypt. But in terms of digital transformation, you could enhance guests' stay in the hotel by being able to book restaurants beforehand or from the room through a tablet. You could also have room service, all these kind of things. But at this point in Egypt, given the price points at which average hotels in Egypt sell, I think it would be very difficult to justify any of these expenses at the moment. It's exciting, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, and Rami, you on the other hand, you are essentially, working as tech enabled as possible, as much as possible as well. This is at the core of your offering. I know that. Is there other stuff that you're looking forward to implementing moving on into the future in that sort of sense?
Sure. So we have started a couple of things already. One of them is, for example, self check-in. So we don't have to check in the guests anymore. They can do self check-in, and also some the self check-in now is happening so keyless. So you don't have even the need to do the key. It's all remotely being done. What we want to implement as well now is even virtual viewing. So if someone want to book an apartment for 1 month, instead of having to go and do the viewing themselves and meet, let's say, a representative from the company, now this will be done through a virtual camera, a virtual tour. So these are some of the technologies that we are implementing now for the situation, but also I think they are very useful as well for the future because it saves money, it saves times, and I think I would say that this crisis maybe pushed us more to implement these things faster and quicker.
Yeah. Now, I want to touch on something with Karim, something that both you and Jean-Marc spoke about to a degree. Jean-Marc had spoken about traveler sentiment being something that's difficult to measure and difficult to quantify. And you spoke about the value proposition for the traveler and the guest. Do you think that the memory of the potential traveler, the potential tourist, will remember how a country as a destination handled this crisis? Is this something that will factor in the decision making of a traveler in the future, the same way they might have reacted to, for example, a terrorist attack or something, a similar sort of difficult situation?
I think that for sure, clients, customers, tourists will pay attention to the way countries managed the crisis, of course. Because what is at stake is their own security when they visit the destination. So of course, that will have an impact on the way that companies, businesses, tourist sites will organize their work, and the way to welcome the tourists. So of course, I think that customers will pay attention to it, for sure, right after the crisis, but I think that we won't have long-haul tourists right after the crisis. So now we talk about the time rebound, after the crisis. I think that the resilience won't be effective before a certain amount of time. But today, I don't have any crystal ball, to tell you when, but for sure, I think it will take time. And I was the other day watching an interview of Mr. Sébastien Bazin, the CEO of Accor Group. And he was saying something very interesting. And it's common sense, let's say. He said that, nothing will be as before, in our hotels, and especially in terms of the way, we show that hotels are clean. I don't know how to say exactly to convey his thought, but he was saying that people will ask for guarantee that the hotel is very clean, that everything is here to guarantee the security for the clients. And of course, I think that it will be a very, very important fact that we guarantee to the visitors all the security and conditions, so that they'll be safe visiting our destination. So that means we will have to rethink again, the way we welcome the tourists.
Yeah. So I'll conclude with Rami, just building on these couple of points that were raised now. So we're slowly seeing signs of easing. Spain are easing their restrictions, etc. So hopefully there's light at the end of the tunnel for this crisis. What are the potential changes in tourist behavior that you can foresee that might impact your business model moving forward? Of course, like Karim said, no one has a crystal ball, but what can you project in the short, medium term, long term that can have an impact on as an opportunity on your business model?
Well, I think one of the things that, as Karim mentioned, for them is about the cleaning. I think people will be very like the cleanness of the apartment would be very important for them. They would be asking for more checklist about it. They ask maybe go for sanitization before them. This would be the first thing that come to mind. What else? I think it will take time for people to come back in the numbers that were there before. Because it's for them to gain the confidence again, to start traveling again. The third thing is that I would assume that for a short period, a lot of people would have lost their jobs, a lot of people have lost part of their income. So the spending level would be different than what used to be before. And people would be looking, for more value for money and more cheaper options if they'll be able to travel. I think maybe this would be a bit in our favor. Because when you offer an apartment, it's different than when you offer an hotel. Again, you can still control your costs. You can offer cheaper options. So these are some of the things that come to mind that would be different in the future.
All right, so I think maybe now is thank you for that. Maybe now is a good time to get to some of these questions. We've gotten quite a few. First from Thomas D. He asks you, Rami, in particular, does Maison Privee rent some apartments as a tenant? If so, how have you handled the payments to the landlords during COVID-19? If not, then what would you suggest as a way forward for the holiday home companies which have rented apartments? With respect to the deal that could offer to the landlords?
We currently have only one apartment tenanted, and all the rest are managed. So I would say we're quite lucky in this term. So we are not affected. But I would say there are a lot of other players who have the business model is that they call the arbitrage model, that they rent apartments on long term, then they re-rent them on a short term, and they make the profit from the difference in the rent. In this case, I think some of them might have force majeure clauses in their contracts, so they will be able to get out of their contracts or renegotiate with the landlord. The good news for them is that, landlords need them. So because there is a slowdown, so they would be open to renegotiation with them.
Okay. Yeah. I guess the lesson learned, is it's a fluid set of circumstances that's ever changing. So everybody's trying to find a way to make accommodations and make things work so that we can move on, right? Right. And again, from Thomas to you, Rami, we'll just follow on with that. Regarding DTCM regulations for meeting guests at check-in, and now this and then now you're implementing self-check-in for guests. Are you finding cooperation from the authorities in the implementation of regulations, bearing in mind that guest safety is always the fundamental priority? Is there a conversation that you're having with DTCM, and are you finding a cooperative entity?
Sure. There were some sectors that were considered as vital sector, and in which there were an ease of restrictions. And one of them is hospitality. You just need to follow the procedures and the process, and you need to have a letter from the company. So although we do encourage self-check-in and self-viewing, but in certain instances you need to meet the guests themselves, and in this cases our team go and meet them, and they have passed through several checkpoints before where the police were very understanding of the nature of the job. Of course, we take extra precautions because we care both about our team and also about the guests. So our teams are instructed, for example, to be wearing gloves, to be wearing masks, not hands with the guests, to stay to keep distance between them, and they explain this to the guests in a very polite way, and to them that this is actually more for the safety of the guests themselves.
Great. Now for Jean-Marc, another question that's come in more on the business sort of implications. Do you reckon if the question is by an anonymous attendee, do you reckon if the crisis lasts more than 6 months, will it lead to consolidation and closures in the industry? And how do you see the industry bouncing back, assuming, let's say, a 6 to 9 month lockdown or travel restriction period?
So I think that the good thing about it is that, like I said, is, the perception of safety is not affected so much. So as soon as everything is, under control when it comes to international traveling, hotels will be able to bounce back pretty fast. The problem is, over 6 months, I think meeting fixed expenses is going to be very challenging, especially for players who doesn't have a lot of reserves in terms of liquidity. In addition, when you got to restart a hotel that's been closed for 6 months, that's going to be also very expensive, especially if you got to start rehiring. At this point, if you close down completely, then you have to go undergo some pretty comprehensive maintenance with all the machinery. So it could be expensive. And 6 months, I think, would be the cutoff where you will start to see a lot of hotels having a hard time reopening again. I mean, unless, the government provides loans and facilities, but it would, 6 months would be really challenging, I would say, yeah.
Yeah. Now, the next topic, the next question by Yurana is on a similar vein. It asks about, government support. And Karim, I know you've spoken about the 500 million euro support that the French government has sent out to industry players. In Egypt, are you seeing government support, Jean-Marc? And when you're done, I will ask Rami about the same about the UAE.
Well, they promised to do a few things to help businesses. Again, everything is really fluid, like you said. Hamad, is you're being told something, but you're not sure how it's going to be implemented and when it's going to be implemented. So they've already postponed some tax payments, which are very welcome, but in terms of helping with the payrolls and everything, the government said they would be helping with that, but we don't know how and when and how much. So at this point in time, it's really difficult, and this is one of the major challenges that we don't know how much, if they're going to help, and with what and how much.
Yeah. And Rami, what about you? Have you seen any form of dialogue with the authorities about possible support, or with the banks to support quite an important sector in the UAE?
At the nationwide level, there have been a couple of announcements related to the banking sector about certain ease, but for us as an industry, so far there is nothing related to us. I mean, I would say the only symbolic ease happened is on reduction of 10% on the utility bill. So this will help our owners reduce a bit their utility bills, but it's just 10%. So
yeah. And then another question that might be best attended to by Jean-Marc as well is, or maybe even Rami as well, we'll open the floor to you, and Karim. I guess all of you guys will have a very interesting perspective on this. Do you reckon, as in a post-COVID world, if there is a serious economic impact on purchasing power of travelers, is this a serious threat to true five-star hospitality? Is this something that you see affecting five-star hospitality in general?
If I give you my opinion, I think, first of all, if you're looking at real 5 stars, I think it's obviously the least sensitive segment, because the people going to these hotels tend to be, less sensitive to price changes, and their purchasing power tends to remain, more constant. The problem in countries like Egypt is that you have the 5 stars setting for the price of the 4 stars, and the 4 stars setting for the price of the 3 stars. There is no, if you want, consistency in pricing. So the one that will end up being squeezed out are the people at the lower end of the spectrum. But definitely, I think, everybody's going to be looking for bargains, and they will be looking to get 5 stars for the price of a 4 star. This is, in my opinion, the likeliest scenario.
Okay. And Karim, as a destination that's often associated in general with luxury and the good life, do you think that France, the fundamentals of service industry will be affected in France because of the COVID?
I think that the post-COVID situation, maybe for the next 6 months or 4 months, we'll see more domestic travelers, going to French hotels. And of course, their power of purchase is less than some travelers, for example, coming from the Middle East and from the Gulf countries. So I think that we will have a huge impact on 5-star hotels and palaces. As you know, in France, we have 27 palaces, outstanding hotels. And of course, the Middle East travelers can represent up to 30% of their clientele. So maybe for the Gulf travelers, right after the crisis, they won't come back immediately, but they will come back for sure, maybe after 6 months or something. But in the meantime, I think that the whole industry will suffer. And there, of of course, especially if we are more in the logic of domestic travelers, visiting our region, which is a good thing, by the way, because if we have 170 billion euros of yield, for tourism, I mean, the 2/3 are given by the French travelers. So, but I have doubts that French travelers are going, in 5-star hotels and palaces. So, your question about luxury hospitality hotels, yes, it will have a huge impact. Yes, for sure.
And Rami, to open the floor to you, I mean, you guys offer essentially an alternative to hotel luxury experience. Do you see this as an opportunity for you and your model?
I would say the first problem would be that there might be kind of a price war between the suppliers. So between on the supply side, so this could be the concern that post-COVID, each one is trying, to compensate for the lost business by lowering the prices. And then you'll have coming from the different service providers trying to compete on prices. So this will lower the prices. For us, as alternative to hotels, to be honest with you, for example, our luxury segment are villas. So people who come and stay in villas, it's different clientele than in value proposition than people who are going to stay in hotel, because when they come to stay in villas, they want their space, they want their private pool, the private garden, maybe there are a group of people together or they are a large family. So I would say it's a different product, but yes, maybe also it would be that people will pool together to rent a luxury property because it will be cheaper for them and they stay in it.
Yeah. All right, and we'll wrap up with a final question from Hisham regarding a topic that we didn't talk too much about, but I guess is most pertinent to you, Rami, which is business travel. Hisham asks, as businesses adopt more and more of those digital transformative technologies that we spoke about earlier with you guys, do you think that this can have an impact on, because Dubai, such a large percentage of travel is business travel, do you think that this will have an impact on host cities such as Dubai, Singapore, etc., and what can be done about that?
Definitely, I think there will be a lot of. Now people have experienced working remotely, working from home, and not traveling, and they have seen that maybe a lot of them have seen that business can continue without the need to travel. So definitely there will be, I would say, a change in the lifestyle of people in the future, and this definitely will affect the business traveler segment. But I would like also to say that most business travelers, they still stay in hotels, especially if they're coming for a few days. So for example, if you are sponsored by your company to come to Dubai for a conference, you will most probably stay in a hotel because the company will be paying for you and it's just a couple of days. Our kind of business traveler are usually people who are let's say, consultants who come do a consulting project in Dubai for a month, and they don't want to stay 1 month in a hotel because they just want to have the comfort of being in a home, to be able to cook. So this is the segment that we are getting out of the business traveler, and I think this one will continue because these guys, they need to travel to a different country, to do a project that is kind of a long term. And not just to come for a meeting for a couple of days.
Yeah. Well, I can't thank you. I can't thank the panel enough for your time, your insights. I think we've covered quite a diverse set of topics on the COVID and the MENA industry. I hope all attendees enjoyed the discussion as much as we did. So thank you guys very much. And we're going to be, this session was recorded, of course, and we'll be putting that up on the appropriate channels later for everyone to view. So thank you, everyone. And
thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll talk soon.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.